So you have a limited time frame to enjoy it. Like now at this point, I'm 53, I'm almost 54. I want to do something else. And I was like, I know I'm on a very short runway where I can physically do something like that again. So now I'm training again and see if I can get my body ready to do one more great, big, audacious, stupid thing.
Run across Asia. Before we dive in, it's important to remember that the information we provide is for informational purposes only. Every situation is unique, and decisions regarding your health or legal matters should be made after consulting with your own doctor or lawyer. Our aim is to inform and empower, but personal circumstances require personalized advice. Welcome to another edition of Justice in Scrubs. I'm attorney Richard Hastings, and I'm joined by my co-host,
Dr. Jeff Michaelis.
And today, we have a fascinating guest with us who has done some superhuman things. And we're going to talk about those things and many, many more. And we'd like to welcome to the program, Croix Sather.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Great to be here.
So I've known you for a number of years. I first met you in Toastmasters probably 20 years ago or something, 15?
Over 15, yeah.
And we're going to talk about what you've accomplished, and it's all fascinating to me. So why don't we just start by talking about your background?
Where do you want to start?
So as I recall, you were in a very bad accident. Why don't you talk about that? Where'd you grow up and what happened and those types of things?
Grew up in Westchester, New York, so just outside of New York City. But when I was 14, I'm riding home on my bicycle with my friends. They're on the left side of the road, they're off on the shoulder, and I'm on the right side of the road riding with traffic. And as a lady came over the hill, she was drunk, saw my friend, she panicked, she crossed the double yellow line and hit me head on. So my bike went below her big metal bumper, and I hit the windshield and flew 50 feet into the air. I was in a coma for 4 days, in the hospital for weeks, and physical rehabilitation for about a year.
Oh, my God. And along your career, you did many different things. You became a motivational speaker and an author. And was there a defining moment in your life when you kind of took that pivot and went down that road? And what was that moment?
Well, I was a carpenter for the first, 16, 20 years of my life, my adult life. It was just like my dad, my brothers, my uncles, they were all carpenters, so I became a carpenter. And when I was young, I heard my dad tell me over and over, my worst year in business working for myself was better than the best year working for somebody else. So right from a 14, 15-year-old kid, I'm influenced to never have a job. And I've kind of never really had a real job in my entire life, which is good and bad. So there's definitely both with it. But I became a carpenter, and I didn't want to do that for my whole life. My dad was in his 50s. He was beat up. All of his buddies that he worked with, they were all beat up, and they're only in their 50s. And I was like, that's not the road I want to go down. And so I started getting into personal development and started reading books and listening to audios. Eventually saw Tony Robbins and some other people on stage, and I was like, that's what I want to do. I'd never spoken in my life, on stage or anything like that, but I saw Tony Robbins and others, and it's like, that's what I want to do. I was just so inspired.
So you've written a bunch of books, and the books are about your personal transformation, like you just discussed, and your experiences. Tell us how your experiences helped you write books and to help other people overcome their problems and be inspired.
Nobody will ever say that my life is boring. Hasn't always been easy, but it's never been boring. And so I write from those experiences, from the car accident we talked about, we'll talk about my records in running. And I've lived in other countries. I've lived in Asia and Mexico, Costa Rica, Colombia. And all of these different experiences play into me writing books. And I also started writing books because I needed to figure out my own problems. I need to figure out why I was always struggling and how to overcome those kinds of things. Then I was always curious about why are some people really wealthy and everybody else seems to struggle paycheck to paycheck. I was like, what's the difference? And it always comes down to mindset.
So when I met you in Toastmasters, and I'm a huge proponent of people setting big goals, and I always like to encourage people and say, yes, you can do it, because you don't want to share your goals with everyone. You have a lot of people that are naysayers. But I remember when you shared this goal with me, I thought to myself, this guy's nuts. This is so ridiculous. I've never heard anything so silly in my life. So you were not a runner at the time, and you decided as this big, hairy, audacious goal of yours that you would run across America. And you would do that in 100 days. So you're going to run a marathon distance a day. And because you were getting into motivational speaking, you were also going to give a motivational talk. And I remember when you first told me that, I thought to myself, I want to encourage him, but I thought, this is the craziest thing I've ever heard in my life. So why don't you tell us about that dream and what happened with that?
When I told people this, everybody unanimously said, it's crazy, it's stupid, or you'll kill yourself. And you can't blame them because I wasn't a runner, and now I'm 39 years old, and I'm going to run a marathon a day for 100 days. So, yeah, of course people think it's crazy. But to me, crazy is going to a job you don't like for 40 or 50 years to eventually get to this thing called retirement, to be too old to really enjoy retirement. That doesn't make any sense to me. I understand why people do it, but that to me is more crazy than going after these huge goals. And so I had 1 year of training. And in fact, right down the road here, not too far from where we were, I was running in circles for 20 miles a day. Right before I ran across America, my training was 20 miles a day, running in a circle, in a 1 mile circle in Danbury, Connecticut.
Oh my God!
Because it was winter and you can't really run many places, so I just ran this one block that was plowed, and just ran around that circle for 5 days a week for 4 hours a day.
So that's part of it, is the physical part. But what did you do to prepare yourself mentally for this? Because I would almost think the mental part is as difficult as the physical part, because, we all have these situations where we start something and our mind just says to us, hey, listen, this is like too hard. Let's stop. And we kind of convince ourselves to stop. But you had to run a marathon a day for 100 days. So how did you prepare for that mentally?
The mental part is definitely a lot harder. It's significantly harder. It's everything. Because if your mind doesn't say get off the couch and go to the gym, you're never going to lose weight. If your mind doesn't say eat better and not eat so much junk food, you're never going to lose weight. If your mind doesn't say focus and work on one particular thing and build a business, you're never going to make enough money. So the mindset is everything. But the mindset is also a muscle. Just like you go to the gym and you build big biceps or big chest muscles or whatever, the mindset is the same thing. Discipline's a muscle. Focus is a muscle. These are all things that you can train to be better. And focus has been my biggest challenge in my whole life. Focus by far is a problem. And so I'm still today working on my focus muscle to keep that in tune. Because if I don't, I'll go down 16 different rabbit holes in the same day and never get anything done.
How do you train your focus? What does that mean?
Well, for somebody like me, I got a couple different ways that I'll deal. If I'm really having a hard time focusing, then I'll put a hoodie on and I'll put earbuds on and I'll just keep the hoodie on and I'll stay there and I'll work. And so just having the same song playing over and over will keep me from being distracted in that sense. And having blinders on kind of like a horse in the hoodie will help me focus on just my computer. I may go to Starbucks. If I'm not focused at home, I'll get up and I'll go to a Starbucks because I need a change of environment. So I have little techniques and hacks that I use. Because when I was a kid, they would have called me ADD. But they didn't call anybody anything back then.
But that's interesting because that's what they tell ADD kids to do, is put background music or something that distract you so you don't have to get overly distracted. So you're only distracted for one thing.
Yeah.
That's interesting that you just came up with that. But that is actually a treatment for some kids.
I tried a lot of different things, and that's one thing that works for me.
And it's funny because I haven't been diagnosed with ADD, but I know that I have it. And
there's no question about it.
And one of the things that I do, so I get up at 3:30 in the morning to go to the gym. And
I thought it was 4:44.
No, I go earlier now because they have a 24-hour gym. You can just wind yourself in. So I wake up early in the morning, and every single morning when I wake up, the first thing my mind says is, "What are you doing? You were tired. Your body's sore. Let's go back to sleep." So I have this little routine that I do. I go over to the sink where I've already made, in the kitchen where I've already made my pre-workout drink. I drink that, and then once I drink it, it's impossible to go back to sleep because you're all jacked up with caffeine. So that works for me.
It's interesting. Everybody has their little things. Let's go back to your running a marathon a day for 100 days. Tell us what a typical day is like. What did you eat, and did you go to the bathroom or that kind of stuff? And also tell us about how the media appearances occurred after that. How did you handle that?
Well, I had a whole team that handled the media appearances. So I had a PR team, and they managed that because there was no way I was going to manage that myself.
So they followed you in a car, or?
No, they were working remotely. They set it up. They organized it. They organized the talks every day. So, and that was a fortune to pay for them. But they managed all of that. So I basically just had to show up every morning and speak someplace, and then go for a run in the afternoon. And the audiences were addiction centers, homeless shelters, United Way, Wounded Warriors, Hope for the Warriors, all these groups that are generally in transition and going through some sort of difficulty in their life. So my message every day was to rise above your circumstances and create a life that you want to live. So every morning was a talk, and then a run, and then I start over. And in there was podcasts and TV interviews and all kinds of things.
Let's talk about the run, though. How did you prepare for it? How did you eat and that kind of stuff?
Frankly, I didn't really prepare. I dragged myself out of bed, and it would take me 15 minutes to get out of bed, standing up, and walk out to, I was in an RV, walk to the kitchen of the RV, because I was so sore and in so much pain that literally it just took me 15 minutes to get my body up and moving. And then the first couple miles was walking, just loosening up, then jogging. Then eventually I would get to a run. But there wasn't thinking. It was just, this is what I got to do. And that's it. And then just go do it. I didn't think about it. And running was my meditation. No music, no audio, no audio books, no podcasts, nothing. Just me on the road by myself out there running. My crew was near, but they weren't with me. So I had a videographer, a photographer, a manager, and a massage therapist. They were in the RV. They were close to me, but they were never with me.
And how did you manage your hydration and your food?
I had a bottle of water with me, and when I was empty, I just called my crew. They came and met me somewhere and gave me a new bottle, or I would just stop at a gas station or something. But then I started losing weight, so I had to gain weight. So the easiest way for me to gain weight was to drink milkshakes. It's fluids, and it's high calorie. So I was ending up drinking 3, 4, 5 milkshakes a day just to keep the calories up and get fluid at the same time.
Did you weigh yourself during the run?
When I looked at myself and I could see I was losing weight, then I started weighing. Because I actually maintained my weight for more than half of it. And then for whatever reason, I started losing weight at that point. So apparently my diet changed or something changed, and I wasn't paying close enough attention. So I had to redo it. I had to adjust.
What was some high points and low points that you had to work through, and some high points that you was really exhilarating?
The low point was day 21, Las Cruces, New Mexico. It's a valley city. You come down the city, and it's just a nice little city on the bottom there. And my body was done. I had run 20 miles. I still had 5 miles to go for that day, and I was just done. And I just sat on the ground. I was by myself. My crew was already rested for the night. I think it was 10 o'clock at night or something like that. And I just sat there, and tears are coming down my face because I have so much pain and tired and exhausted. And I picked myself up after a few minutes. Then I walked maybe a quarter mile, sat down again, rested a little bit, picked myself up. It took me 4 hours to finish that night. I get into my RV. I'm sleeping before my head even hit the pillow. To sleep 4 or 5 hours to start all over the next day. And that went on for weeks before my body... When I woke up one day, it was day 54, I woke up, and it was just like my body was like, okay, I get it. You idiot, you're not going to stop. Let's just go. But what I realized through this is that even though my body felt like it was getting worse and worse, and it was, of course, it was also getting stronger at the same time. But I couldn't feel it. I couldn't see it. I didn't know what was happening. But I was getting stronger, and on day 54 was the day that I realized that this was happening. So while you're going through something really, really difficult, you're actually getting stronger and better. You just can't always sense it, and you don't know it all the time. But you got to keep pushing forward because you'll get through to the other side, and you'll have accomplished something amazing. And so that's where people get stuck is they're in hell, and they just sit down and stay there. When you're in hell, you got to keep walking and go through it.
And how do you get through that? You just push, or is it psychological? Is it physical? Is it both?
It's both. You just got to want it bad enough. You got to choose to not give up. And that's it. You just simply have to choose. If you want to be extraordinary, you got to choose to be extraordinary. You want to be wealthy, you got to choose to be wealthy. You want to be healthy and fit and have a six-pack, you got to choose that. That's the very first thing. And then you have to just do it. Don't think about it. Just shut up and do it. That's it.
I mean,
People
there's a
think
company
about
with
it.
that tagline, just do it. But for me, the amazing part is, and I get the push through your pain, but psychologically, to be sitting down, to get up and walk, your body is just racked with pain. and you finally finish your 25 miles, it's like the old commercial. You wake up and now it's time to make the donuts again. Now you have to get up and do the whole thing over again. And at some point in time, I would think that your mind and your body would get together and say, enough, stop. But you reach down inside yourself and you say, no, we have to keep going. And especially if you're talking about day 21 and you have another 79 days ahead of you, I mean, the thought of that is just incredible.
You've got to want it bad enough. And knowing that in this particular case was only 100 days, it's only going to last so long and then you're done. It's like a football player. They know they're on a limited career. They're good until maybe their 30s. If they're lucky, they can play into their 40s, which a few people do, but not most of them are retired by the time they're 35. So you know you have a limited time frame to enjoy it. Like now at this point, I'm 53, I'm almost 54. I want to do something else. And I was like, I know I'm on a very short runway where I can physically do something like that again. So now I'm training again and see if I can get my body ready to do one more great, big, audacious, stupid thing.
Run across Asia.
Well, I was planning on running up South America, which would have been 10,000 kilometers, so 6,400 miles.
Well, isn't there that you can go from like Ushuaia, Argentina, up to Alaska?
If you want to.
Why don't you do something really big?
Now that would be stupid.
Well, the logistics is the hardest part of that. It's not even the running, just the logistics, the communication.
I would think the running would be pretty hard too.
I think so too. I think you're downplaying the running part of it.
Well, that's certainly hard, but logistically, it's not like the U.S. where there's Wi-Fi or cell service everywhere. In South America, there are patches you go through for hundreds of miles. There's no way to communicate. So it's a little different logistically there.
So as difficult as that is, and I'm thinking to myself that by the time you get to the end of the day, and what's a typical day? How long are you running?
Running was usually about 6 hours, give or take. Anywhere from 4 to 8 hours, depending on hill, terrain, how I'm feeling.
So at some point during the day, you also have to give a motivational speech.
Yes.
And when you're giving a motivational speech, by the very nature of what you're doing, you have to be motivational. And I would think that if you're dragging your sorry ass into, some facility where you're going to talk to people and your body is in tremendous pain, that it's kind of difficult to get up there and be like, hey, and start to talk about what you're doing. How did you get through that?
If it wasn't for the audiences that I was speaking to, I don't know if I could have finished the Run Across America, or at least not finished it as easily, because they inspired me and they motivated me often. So, for example, I was in West Texas. I don't remember which town it was in, but it was a big school. It was a high school, and there was, I think, 600 kids. It was a really, really big audience. And at the end, I would give away my books. And there was this one girl, kind of chubby and frumpy, sitting off to the side, just kind of right there. I could see her, but she was just waiting for all the other kids to get their books signed and leave. And so when she was the last person there, she came up and she told me, she says, every morning when I wake up, my mother tells me, you're a piece of shit. Get the F out of your house. I wish I never had you.
Oh.
And she says, but now after hearing your talk, I realize that I can create something out of myself. I can make a life for myself.
Wow.
So I was meeting people, and that wasn't the only story. I've heard lots of stories that were just as ugly as that in different ways. So every day, not every day, but often, I was meeting people with these stories that I was able to change their lives, inspire them in some little way, and that was inspiring me. So it was very reciprocal.
And I think the other interesting thing is you almost trapped yourself by saying to everybody, especially every day that you're giving a motivational speech, I'm going to be running across America in 100 days. So every day you wake up, you're like, hey, I've already told all these people I'm doing that, and I really can't quit now. And I heard a great story about Zig Ziglar, who wrote a book years ago about how he lost 40 pounds. And he was telling the story, and he said, I had not yet lost the 40 pounds, but I wrote the book, so I knew I had to lose 40 pounds. So it was pretty easy to do that. And it's like you, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy. I'm running across America. It's going to take me 100 days. I'm doing a marathon a day. And guess what? You have to do it now.
Yeah.
You can't just quit.
I mean, that's a great point, because you said setting goals are really important to you. And they might not be realistic for somebody else, but they're realistic for you. And that's how important, like you just said, that you have to find that goal because you told everybody else you're going to do it, right? So can you talk a little bit about that, how important goal setting is for you?
It's the goal setting, and like you said, is that my goal to run across America was inspiring me to do it. It was something that called to me. But most people I know, they don't even want to run across the street. Right. So you have to remember that other people that are naysayers and dream stealers and cynics and just keyboard warriors and saying, ugly stuff, they can't see your dream. They may not have the motivation, they may not have the understanding, they may, whatever reason, or maybe they're just lazy as anything, but it's your dream, so you have to go after that, and you got to ignore all those people that say you can't. And that's part of goal setting, is to understand that people are going to doubt you. They're going to tell you can't. They're going to give you reasons why you shouldn't. And I heard lots of reasons why I couldn't and shouldn't do that, from the money to the physical part, because I wasn't a runner, all these different things. I heard lots of people telling me this is the dumbest idea that I've ever heard, but I couldn't listen to them. And in fact, our friend Heather, she was the first one that told me, she said, not only can you, but you must. And that was a big change for me at that moment, is that one person finally said, like, yes, you can do it. So she was probably as crazy as I am. She's not a runner, but she could see that I wanted this dream. And that's important. And part of it is with the goal setting, like you were talking about, Richard, that I'm telling all these people I'm going to run across America. I still do that today, where I write down in my journal of whatever my goals are. And I learned this from you too, where you talked about you had a financial goal in your business and you wrote down 50 times every day until you finally achieve that goal. So I do that every morning. I'm writing down my goals. I'm evaluating how yesterday went, what I'm going to do today, and making adjustments as you go along. Because like as you know, with the plane's always off course, and the autopilot or the pilot is always correcting to get the plane to the destination. So we have to do that every day.
And, I'm huge about goals and goal setting workshops. And I know Croix is as well. And that's what he teaches and that's what he writes about. And I think it's very, very difficult to do something like that without kind of implanting that in your brain, like writing things down so many different times that it just becomes a part of your being. It's part of your DNA. I'm running across America. While everyone else is saying, what are you talking about? You're like, don't worry about it. I'm running across America. So tell us about the end of that race and what that was like and how exhilarating it was, and your kids and other people that were in your life, and how that all came about.
The whole trip was amazing in different ways depending on where I was. When I was in Texas, I had the top of the Star Mountain. They have a light up there, and they lit it up for me that one night.
Wow.
Running through Louisiana, they named a day after me. So April 13th, 2011 is Croix Sather Day in Louisiana, Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And so all these amazing things happen. But coming to the end, where New York is my home, and you're crossing over the George Washington Bridge, and it was a beautiful sunny Sunday morning, absolutely perfect weather-wise, perfect day. And I'm going over the George Washington Bridge, and there's this monster American flag. I mean, the thing's as big as I've ever seen anywhere, before or since. And then you look down to your right, and you're seeing the New York City skyline. And then you run through the Bronx, and you run through Central Park, and eventually get to the southern tip of Manhattan, where I finished with 3,000 people for Hope for the Warriors. So they held the race up until I got there, and then we all ran together for the last 5 kilometers, last 3 miles.
Wow.
And so I got to finish with all those people. And then at the end of it, they had a kids race. And my kids, who at that time were 5 and 3, so I have one in my hand, on my arms, and I have the other one in my hand, and we crossed the finish line of the last 100 meters. And that was cool. They don't remember, but I have the photos of it, so I know they were there.
And then the other thing we had talked about is when you set a huge goal like that, it's almost anticlimactic when you finish the goal, because you're going to run across America in 100 days. You're going to run a marathon distance a day, and then you do that, and it's like, okay, now what? And there was a now what.
Before I finished even, I was telling my crew, I was like, well, what am I going to do next? What am I going to do next? And my crew's like, why don't you just finish this race? And then, because they couldn't understand what we were talking about before, they couldn't understand that, like, I need something else. I need a big goal. And the next goal was, after trying to figure out what's harder than running a marathon a day, and I could only find one thing, and it was the Badwater, the Death Valley race from Badwater up to the Mount Whitney, which is a 146-mile race from the lowest point to the highest point in the continental United States. And there's an official race once a year where you have a crew and they give you water and food and they take care of you while you're running. Well, I decided to do it without a crew. So solo, unassisted, meaning I had to push a cart that had my food, water, and supplies, which weighed 270 pounds at the beginning. And so this thing that looked, we joked like it looked like an ice cream truck. Remember the old ice cream carts that people used to
Good
go
humor.
on? Yeah, it looked like one of those ice cream trucks. Like I'd open it. And the funny part is that somebody stopped me and asked me if I was selling ice cream.
Oh my God.
And being in Death Valley, I probably could have charged like $20 an ice cream. So it was 117 degrees Fahrenheit when I started, and it was below freezing at the finish line.
So you pushed 270 pounds?
At the beginning, and then as I'm drinking water, it's going down and down.
A little bit, but not a lot.
Yeah, well, I ended up actually, when I got to the first major hill, before you're actually getting to the mountains, it's just a big hill. And that one I started dumping water out because I realized I had too much water. And so to get rid of the weight, I'm just letting water go, and which was a big risk because if I dump too much water out, now I'm screwing myself because I can't get help from anyone. So
what did you put in that cart when you started?
It was a cart that I made kind of like an ice cream truck where it was insulated. I had frozen 2.5 gallon cartons of water. And so I would take one carton out at a time and have it on the top to be able to get to the water easily with a little faucet thing on there. And so the rest of it stayed frozen, so it was always cold in the desert. So no matter how long I was out there, that would have stayed frozen for days had I needed to stay out there that long. And then, so that was most of it, was just the water weight. The cart weighed 30 pounds or something. The cart was aluminum, it weighed almost nothing. And I had a little bit of food, but then I had to have clothes and stuff, so when I got to the freezing temperatures, I was able to stay warm. Which was probably my biggest challenge, was managing my body for heat and cold. Because when you're running like that for hours and hours and hours, your body loses its ability to manage temperature.
And what kind of food are you eating?
I didn't eat a whole lot on that trip because it was so hot, my body just didn't want anything. So I forced some potato chips, some pretzels for the salt, and then some beef jerky, and then I ate applesauce, and I had little kids like applesauce stuff, the things you give to kids that have all the vegetables and stuff. I was eating that too. That's actually kind of nasty, actually.
But it wasn't really a race per se. It was
against the clock.
Right, so you're not running against other people. You're basically racing the clock.
Yes.
And what does that mean? You're trying to set a record.
Set a record. The record was there for 13 years. Only 2 people had completed it before me, a guy and a woman. And the guy's record was set, the first person that said it was set 13 years ago by Marshall Ulrich. And lots of people had tried, and nobody was able to finish this race until I came on, and I'm this non-runner. So 2 years earlier, I hadn't run at all. Then I trained for Run Across America, and then a year more of training, then I'm in Death Valley running through. And
what was the old record?
78 hours, I think it was.
So you're running, you're racing the clock. You're running 117 miles.
146 miles.
146, I'm sorry. And the difference in elevation is from below sea level to 14,500 feet. So maybe you're 14,750, something like that.
Yeah.
And you're pushing everything that you have to eat and drink and wear uphill in a cart. And you're going from 110 to below zero. Yeah. And I thought the first thing was nuts. This is like completely ridiculous. And you're racing against the clock. So over this period of time, how much did you sleep?
I didn't really sleep at all. I would take short little breaks, and I would close my eyes for a few minutes, and I set the alarm, and I had it right next to my head so that it would buzz on my phone would buzz and make the noise. So I would rest for a few minutes, but I basically didn't sleep for 72 hours. And I didn't eat that much. It was just a matter of pushing through. And on those mountains, when I'm pushing that cart up there, I'm moving slow. So this wasn't really a
moving slow.
So this was less about running, although there was a little bit of running in it. It's really a crossing, but they call it a run.
But the other people that did it weren't pushing a cart.
Yeah.
Oh, they were too?
That's this particular race was pushing a cart.
Pushing a cart.
The annual race, they're just running, and you have a crew and people to assist you. I was doing it by myself. I had a medic there, and I had a crew there just in case something went wrong. Because people do die in Death Valley from heat exhaustion all the time.
Sure they do.
All the time. So I had an emergency crew there just in case. But I couldn't get any help from anyone for any reason.
Wow.
So what were some of the high points? I would imagine the whole thing is the low point, but what were some of the high points? Yeah, what part didn't suck? The whole thing.
The whole thing sucked. The whole thing was absolutely
And you finish
terrible.
and you get to the top and you're like, I'm not doing this again. We wanted to take a quick break to remind you about our sponsor, findagreatattorney.com. Dealing with the aftermath of an accident or injury can be overwhelming. And the last thing you want to worry about is finding the right lawyer. FindAGreatAttorney.com simplifies the process by connecting you with one of the top attorneys in your area who specializes in your specific type of case. Whether you've been injured in a car accident, suffered a slip and fall, or experienced medical malpractice, FindAGreatAttorney.com has a network of experienced lawyers ready to help. And remember, their service is completely free, so you can focus on your recovery without worrying about the cost of legal representation. If you or someone you know needs legal assistance, don't hesitate to visit FindAGreatAttorney.com and let them match you with one of the best lawyers in your area for your needs.
But the worst part of it was that the day that I started, it was an off day for me. And runners have that, sometimes you just don't feel well. And I get 45 miles in and I can't finish. I'm behind schedule. There's no way I'm beating the record, and no less even finish that race. So I had to call it quits on that one particular day. But I have to finish in July or August, and this was the end of August. So if I was going to beat the record, I had to get back out there a few days later. So I went back to Las Vegas, rested for 3 days, and I did the same race over again. But not starting from mile 45 where I finished, starting from mile 0. And I had to do the whole thing all over again on 3 days, on tired legs just 3 days later. And so now I'm running, and I'm getting to the point at where the first time, 11 miles in, I was vomiting. And by 21 miles in, I'm dealing with heat exhaustion. This time, I run past mile 11, and I'm feeling good. This is a good day in the office. And I get to the part where I was dealing with exhaustion, and I'm feeling great. Not like the few days before. But this time now, I see a little blue butterfly. Now, this is Death Valley. There's nothing but sand and scorpions there. There's nothing that lives there. But this little blue butterfly comes by, flickers for a few minutes, and floats away. My brother had died when I was preparing to run across America. And after my brother passed, my sister got a tattoo on her back shoulder. And it was a picture of a blue butterfly.
Wow.
So in Death Valley, now I'm seeing this blue butterfly again. So I talk to it as if my brother was there and say hi to him. And then I just keep going. And so now I get to mile 32, 45, and I just keep going and going and going. And I'm feeling good the whole way. And I'm way ahead of schedule. And I was like, I know I'm going to break this record. And then I get to the top, and as you're starting to climb Mount Whitney, there's a one straight road, and there's grass fields on each side, and it's dark. It's like dusk at that point. And there are hundreds of bears on each side.
Oh, my God.
And I've never seen a bear in real life outside of the Bronx Zoo. So I'm like, are these guys going to eat me as I'm going up? My crew won't be near me, so they're staying in the van, and they're just there just in case. So I'm like, you got to stay close, because if a bear comes, I'm jumping in the van. But no bears, no problems. I didn't get eaten. And I'm running up the hill. So at that point, when you're climbing up that last mountain, that last marathon, I leave my cart in the town. And I put a backpack on with anything I need. So the last marathon, I'm carrying everything I need. And so I have to finish the last mountain up a gnarly trail getting up to the top of Mount Whitney. I get to the top of Mount Whitney just as sunrise is just peeking over. I couldn't have timed this better if I wanted to. And as I'm coming over, you're seeing this majestic sunrise, which is absolutely amazing. But I'm delirious because I haven't slept in 3 days. I've barely eaten a single thing, and I'm nearly delirious, but I still got a few hundred yards left to go. But I get to the top, and there's a little medallion there that says Mount Whitney, 14,505 feet. So I take a picture of my watch and the medallion, and I finish the race. And not only did I beat the record, I crushed it by almost 5 hours.
Wow.
So a 13-year-old record, and I beat it by 5 hours. But here's the worst part. So as if it wasn't bad enough to get there, here's the worst part. I'm coming down the mountain, and I go meet the official of the whole race. And there's a guy there. His name's Bogey. And he's there. And he had tried this race several times. And he was there just a few weeks earlier. But somebody hit his cart with the car. They sideswiped him and took out his cart. And so he's like, well, that's it. I'm done for this year. I'll try again next year. Young guy. He's like, I think he was 32 at the time or something. But I'm almost, 40 at that time, 41. And so this young guy, he's trying, he's going to go back. So I come down the mountain. He's like, he decided, you know what? You went back after 3 days. I'm going back too.
Wow.
So I meet, and I'm just like, yeah, whatever. He's tried so many times. He's never going to do it. I held the record for 3 days
No.
before this guy goes and breaks my record that I broke for 13
Wow.
13-year standing record. I break and some idiot goes, "Sorry, Bogey, you're an idiot."
Well,
Breaks it 3 days later.
you inspired him.
So talk about a
inspired him.
motivational coach. He
Yeah.
broke his own record by having somebody else be inspired.
But here's the best part that I got out of it. For the next month or 2 or 3, I was the most miserable person you ever wanted to meet. I was just so angry that somebody beat my record after just 3 days. I was just so caught up in myself, so caught up in ego. And I go out for a run with an Ironman buddy of mine, and we're running. We get about 7-9 miles in, and we stop at a bridge, and we're talking. And I'm just bitching. I'm moaning and groaning. I'm complaining about this idiot that goes and beats my record. And she gets in my face. She's like a Jillian Michaels type person. And she gets in my face. She's like, "What's the matter with you? You beat the world record. You're a world record champion. Nobody can take that away from you. So suck it up and move on with your life." And it was the medicine I needed. And it took me a few days to process that. But what I realized is that I was putting too much validation into external things and not just accepting that I was the best in the world. Even if it was only for 3 days, I was the best in the world, and I'm still a world record champion, and I always will be.
You know, it's interesting. I saw Amy Cuddy, who's a social scientist, and years ago she had the third most watched TED Talk on YouTube. And she talked about at the Olympics. So when you take a picture of the gold, silver, and bronze medal winner at the Olympics, the happiest person, of course, is the gold medal winner. The second happiest person is the bronze medal winner because they're just happy to be on that podium. The most miserable person is the silver medal winner because they're thinking, of the 8 billion people on the planet, they're standing next to the one person that's better than they are. And it's the same kind of thing. You're like in rarefied air doing what you did, but you turn that around to say, that son of a bitch broke my record 3 days after I said it. But it's fascinating. And I'm curious about mentally the differences between the Run Across America and Badwater. What were the psychological differences there?
Run Across America was easier in the sense that I got at least a few hours every day to rest, and I was interacting with other people and meeting the groups and the audiences, and I got to sleep if I needed to sleep. If I needed to nap, I could nap. Death Valley, I didn't have any of that. I was by myself for 72 hours. And it was just me and the scorpions, and that was it. And so that was much, much harder. And physically, it was way, way harder. Running a marathon a day is it's not easy. It's
for 100
tough.
days.
For 100 days. But
Right.
running 146 miles nonstop, pushing a cart, significantly harder. Multitudes harder than Run Across America.
And it's funny, when you think about it, you're talking about 3 days versus 100 days. And for that 3 days, you are just punishing your body. I mean, it's like a Navy
Nonstop.
SEAL kind of situation where you're just taking yourself to the limits.
Yeah. Yeah, and the temperatures, and it's brutal in every way. And I didn't listen to music or podcasts or anything there either. It was just me in the desert. And the reason I don't listen to music or podcasts or anything, even today, when I just go out for a run, I go running every day just about. And even today, I don't listen to it because I want to be in tune with what's going on with my mind. I don't want the distraction because music, we have tons of distractions every day. And I don't want that. That's my meditation time. That's my processing time. That's where I'm going through things that I want to do or have done. And it's my meditation. So I don't go to therapists. I go running. So if I'm having a bad day, I'll go running. And when I was going through my divorce, I would go running. I'd wake up in the middle of the night. I can't fall asleep again at 3 o'clock in the morning. I'd get up and I'd go running. And so that's my therapy. And I don't listen to anything because I need and I want my brain to mind and my emotions to be able to process what's going on in life. Because between the ADD and everything else that's going on, if I don't have this, I don't think I'd be nearly as level-headed as I am.
Wow.
And you know me well. I'm not too level-headed. It's like, imagine me without running.
So can we go back to that little girl that you met in New Mexico or somewhere?
West Texas, yeah.
West Texas. What did you tell her?
I just listened to her. I don't know if I said really anything, but I just listened to her and I gave her a hug at the end. And that was it. And we ended up talking for a little while over text message for a few weeks after that. But it was I just gave her space. So when she told me that part, saying, my mom says every day that you're a piece of shit, I wish I never had you, now get the F out of my house, is she paused before she could find her next words, and I just gave her the space to find them. And that was hard for me because, I want to jump in and fix everything.
Right.
But I just gave her the space, and then she shared the other part with me.
I think that's what she needed.
I think so.
Yeah.
And I needed just to hear her do it too. Because the hard part for me is when I'd hear all these horror stories and I would hear about abuse and rape and all these horrible things, I'd go back to my RV, and usually after I gave a talk, I would take a nap. And I would often cry myself to sleep just because the pain that these people are experiencing. You could see it in their eyes. You could feel it. And so I needed to release that and just fell asleep crying.
Now, what do you write in your books about? I mean, you write. Let's go into about your books, right? How many books have you written, and what do they talk about?
Two that I'm proud of, and then I have a few others that aren't so great. Mm-hmm. The funny part with that is that when I was in, I think it was 7th grade, I wrote an essay, and it was about the Trans Am car, so the Pontiac Trans Am, which I actually have one outside right now. And I'm writing this story, and at the end of the story, I didn't write it so well, and so the teacher gave me an F, and she says some people just aren't meant to be great writers. And so for the longest time, I didn't read, I didn't write. I mean, I could read and write, I just didn't like to. So when I discovered these guys that would speak on a stage, and I discovered they're authors as well, and I was like, well, I got to figure this thing out. And so I started writing. So I had to go from a very, very minimal basic level of English, writing and speaking, to learn how to become an author. And I write just the way I speak. And a lot of people compliment me on that, but a lot of writers don't, and a lot of editors don't. And they're like, this is too casual. And now that's how everybody writes. Everybody writes casual now. So I was ahead of the curve a little bit. But I got a lot of hate and a lot of complaints, a lot of people writing on social media that I'm writing this incorrectly, I spelled this wrong. And so as an adult in my 40s, I'm learning how to be a writer. And so I write from the heart, and that's what I would go by. And then I'd have editors and I'd have other people help me with it. So my books are about just what we've been talking about, rising above where you are and creating a life that you want to live. And so we're here for maybe 80 years? And I don't want to be my last few years of life and be in a rocking chair looking over my life and saying, this really sucked. I want to go worn out, beat up, and having a whole bunch of awesome freaking stories that I can tell to my kids and my grandkids and whoever else will listen to me when I'm gray and old and delirious.
So I think it's important, the message you have is that you can persevere and do anything that you want. But I think most people look at you and say, I could never run across America. I could never do the Badwater Challenge. So how do you take the things that you've learned during these incredible physical endeavors that you've engaged in, how do you take that and make it more personalized for, the young woman in Texas, or, the guy that's looking to get a new job, or the kid that's having difficulty in school? What do you tell those people?
It's not always about having this big goal. I'm going to be this author. I'm going to be this whatever person in my life. It's what's next. What is the one thing that would make your life better this year or this month? And then set that goal and do that. So if I look back at my bucket list, things I wanted to accomplish all my life from back earlier, way before Run Across America was even on the radar, they were pretty small goals. I look back at them now, I'm like, really? I wrote this down? This was so stupid. But at that point, they weren't stupid. They were a big goal for me then. So just leaving carpentry and trying to find another way to make money other than what I grew up in. I mean, I've been swinging a hammer since I was a little kid. And so to switch from a very blue-collar job to an intellectual career, that was a canyon I had to get through. And that was really big, not only to figure it out in business-wise, but emotionally. Like, you and I couldn't have been friends when I was a young man. Because you're smart, you're an attorney, you're successful. I would have been intimidated by you to the point where I couldn't even get words out of my mouth. And anybody that we worked for, because we usually worked for very wealthy people and building their houses, renovating their kitchens, things like that, I had a very hard time just simply speaking to these wealthy people because I put them on a pedestal. I thought they were different. I thought they were special. And as I got older and I got experience, I realized that they're no different and they're just as screwed up as I am, just in different ways.
Very true.
We're all screwed up, just in different ways. But that was the biggest canyon I had to climb through, was that emotional one, to go from a carpenter to writing books. That was the hardest part, by far. And sometimes that dragon kind of rears its head, and I still have to deal with that every once in a while.
And, one of the things I'm hearing, which I think is so important that people understand, is that, it's all about, I would never think about running across America. But if I'm not a runner, I could think about running a half a mile at the local track, or running a mile, or getting involved in a 5K race. So it's all about taking small steps and just building upon that. Because nobody runs across America by waking up and getting off the couch and saying, where are you going? I'm going to run across America. See you in 100 days. It's all about little steps.
Well, one person.
Now, when people set goals, sometimes they don't make their goals, right? Sometimes they fail. And do you address that? Do you want to talk about that and how you just need to keep going and persevere? Because not everything's perfect. Life is difficult, and maybe you won't be successful at the first thing, but then look for the next thing.
Or you're probably not going to be successful at many things, and you just have to accept that as part of the journey. And those things are the things that get you to the next things. In fact, it was just this morning I was recording about that idea you're talking about, is that most people don't achieve great goals because they don't set the goals. They don't get clarity on what they want. So that's why I write down in my journal every day. And that's why I created the journal. We were talking about offline before. I had a journal, our daily journal, daily planner, that was #1 on Kickstarter at the time. It was one of the best-selling things on Kickstarter of all times back then. And so I'm relaunching that again under a new name. But because I use that, and when I'm not using it, I just flounder. I'm here. I'm looking at that. I'm all over the place. But when I do that every morning, I'm going through my goals and I'm getting clarity. I'm writing it down. One of the things I learned from you, writing it down. What's the goal? Write it down. Write it down. I write it down every day. Not only the goals that I want to achieve, the things I want to stop. So I'm now 40 some days into no news of any kind, of any sort. I don't care if the world implodes at this moment. I don't want to know, because the toxicity of the news and everything that you see online was interfering with my life in a significant way. And so I've stopped news. And so every day I was writing down, like an alcoholic that gives up drinking. It was like day 1, no news. Day 2, no news. And then I get up to like day 33 or 4 and I just stopped counting because I didn't need to anymore. But I had to get through that transition, so it's writing it down. But most people don't have clarity on what they want. They don't define what they want. They don't choose. You can't be great if you don't choose what's going to be great.
They might not write it down because they're afraid to fail.
True.
And I think one of the things is, if you set goals, you might fail. And it's okay to fail because that means you're trying. Do you want to talk about that a little bit too?
You have to fail. You're going to fail no matter what. Nobody picks up a baseball bat as a child and hits every ball or catches every ball in the field. You don't learn your language, whatever your native language is. You don't learn that just right away. You learn that over 18 plus years of school. I live in South America for a lot of the time, and I had to learn Spanish as an adult. And every time I got into a taxi, today I learned how to say hello. So like today's taxi ride, I was talking about saying hello. Then the next taxi ride, I'm saying I'm from New York. And the next taxi ride, I'm saying what I do as a living. And so every day I would take taxis. Now, I love to walk. I walk to everything. But I would take the taxis just so I'd have a new person to practice with. And I could fail with somebody that I would never see ever again in my life, most likely. But then the funny thing is that I'd end up with these same taxi drivers eventually. We end up in the thing, and they're like, how'd you learn Spanish so well? Because I learned conversational Spanish, real basic, but I learned it in 6 weeks because I studied for 4 hours a day. I took 2 hours of private lessons, 2 hours of studying, self-study. And within 4 to 6 weeks, I was moderately conversational. And I'm still improving it. I'm not 100% fluent yet, but I'm pretty close.
So I think it's important to go over the goal setting. So when you say you have to have definitive goals, you can't say something like, I want to lose weight. You have to say, I want to weigh 152 pounds. You can't say, I want to run. You want to say something like, I want to run in a 5K race by, November 30th, 2024. Whatever it is, it has to be very, very specific. And then we were talking about this. You drive it deep down into your brain, and it almost becomes a part of your persona, that you know what you have to do, you know how you have to train, and you force yourself to get to that point. And I think that's one of the reasons why you're so successful at what you do.
I think the only thing I would put an explanation point on that is that we don't always have to have a time limit on a goal. Sometimes the goal needs to be just the action. And then the goal, you'll achieve it just by doing those actions. If we focus too much on a goal, or at least a lot of people, I know I've been guilty of this too, if I focus too much on that goal, sometimes I won't achieve it because I'm too focused on the goal rather than the actions I need to do every day to get to that goal. So like the no news, I focus on no news. My goal is that I don't watch news anymore, and I may never, ever watch it again. I don't know. But my goal is for being healthy and fit is I know I got to go out and run every day, and I got to eat healthy every day. I just found out that I was very anemic, so I was really low on blood iron. And it's because I was donating blood too often. So as a PSA, don't donate blood every 8 weeks, even though they allow you to. Because what happens is you dip into the iron and you dip lower and you dip lower, you dip lower. And then after the fourth time of donating blood, I can barely even walk. I can't go up a flight of stairs. And I'm like, what the hell is going on with me?
Eat liverwurst sandwiches.
And so I just happened to have a annual physical, and they checked my blood, and my numbers are down on the floor. They're like, you're borderline like dead.
Borderline dead.
Well, you've been borderline dead a few times.
A few times, but for different reasons. And so I started taking iron supplements, and then now we're equaling it out. But I didn't know. I thought, well, it's a good thing you're donating. And I've always donated blood, but sporadically. And then I started donating. Well, my kids are donating, so I'm with them. I'm going with one, then I'm going with the other. So I was there every 8 or 9 weeks. And so now I have to. But the point of that is that like we see these roadblocks, and you have to deal with them. And so I wasn't really running for the past few weeks until my iron started getting normal. But I'm still out there doing it. I'm walking mostly. I'm not running at that point, but I'm still out there because I know if I don't run or if I don't get exercise in, I'm going to get fat for one. But I know I'm also emotionally not going to be feeling well. So it's the point of it is that sometimes you set a goal, which is a big goal. I'm going to do this. I'm going to be here on this particular date. And I'm going to have this particular number, whatever that is. But other times you just have to go through the actions, and the goal becomes an end result.
So what are you doing now?
Talking about you guys.
Let's talk about what advice you would give somebody if they're stuck. They want to get started. They don't know how to get started. What should they do?
Cut out everything that's getting in your way. We let too many things get into our lives, and it clutters our mind so we can't get clarity. So if you're doing, like, we used to be in Toastmasters together. I was a volunteer firefighter. I was in politics. I was doing all these different things. I was everywhere, but I wasn't taking care of myself. And so I had to learn how to take care of myself first. And so if you're stuck somewhere, then you probably have too many things going on, and you have to eliminate anything that's getting in your way. And so now all that news time that I'm not spending reading or watching the news, now I'm using it to study Spanish or studying marketing or doing some other things. I'm using it for productive things, or I'm meditating more. And so, which I haven't been consistent on my life. I'm mindfulness and just being quiet and figuring out where the clarity comes from. And so if you're stuck, then you got to figure out where do I want to be first? Mm-hmm. And if you can't figure that out, well, you better just sit down, shut up, and turn the world off until you figure out what you want to do. And if you sit there still enough, quiet enough, long enough, the answer will come to you. But nobody does that because the world is just insane right now with everything that's just bombarding you with technology.
So before we wrap up, what is the big takeaway that you could leave our audience with?
Follow your dreams and not in that like woo-woo kind of sense. Like, go after something that excites you. And you may have a great job. It doesn't mean quit your job and go, nomadically traveling the world like I do. Although it could mean that. I mean, that's essentially what I did. I sold everything. I'm like, screw this. I need a change in life. And I just started traveling the world nomadically. And I'm just finishing that up now. 7 years later, I'm coming back into the real world. But it's been amazing. But follow the thing that you want to do, whether it's on the side or it's full time, and do something that fills you up. I was a volunteer firefighter EMT for 7 years. That was a major portion of my life that I loved at that point. That was huge for me. That led to other things, that led to other things, that led to other things. Figure out what you want now, and it'll lead to other things.
So lastly, how can people connect with you, get in touch with you, follow you?
My name is kind of strange, so you're probably not going to spell that correctly. But you can go to unstoppablemorning.com, and you can get my journal for free. You download it, you print it out, and you can use it. All the instructions are there on how to use it. So you can get clarity, so you can set your goals, so you can accomplish all the things that you want.
And is your website also croixsather.com?
croixsather.com.
So CROIXSATHER.com.
Yes.
And I know you'd love to hear from people. I know you're huge into helping people out, so we would encourage people, for whatever reason, to contact you.
Excellent.
At unstoppable.com.
Unstoppablemorning.com.
Unstoppablemorning.com.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where you'll get the journal and how I start my day. So if you're having trouble getting clarity or being productive and effective, then that's my whole plan, and it's completely free.
Croix Sather, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you both.
Thank you. Amazing. Thank you.